Whoa, a jack comes at the river.
It's over. Gus has done it. Two-time World Poker Tour champion.
They called him the Great Dane for a reason. He climbed to the top of the poker world faster than almost anyone before him. But in poker, dominance never lasts forever. And Gus's fearless, all-out style, the very thing that made him a genius, would eventually become his biggest risk. This is the rise and fall of Gus Hansen. Gustav B. Hansen, better known to the world as Gus, didn't exactly follow a straight road to greatness. His story starts far from the bright lights of Las Vegas in Copenhagen, Denmark, where he was born on February 13th, 1974. An only child, Gus showed early signs that he was wired differently. While most kids were packed into classrooms, Gus spent much of his elementary years being homeschooled by his mother and aunt. That setup gave him freedom, focus, and a quiet space to sharpen his mind. But Gus wasn't just academic, he was fiercely competitive. Tennis became his first battlefield, and not casually either. He climbed the national youth rankings and looked like a future professional in the making. Then, just like that, an injury slammed the brakes on everything. The dream ended before it could fully begin. For a kid who thrived on competition, that kind of setback could have crushed him. Instead, it pushed him to find a new arena. That arena turned out to be a backgammon board. Gus picked up the game his father had once taught him and dove in head first. One summer was all it took. He studied, practiced, and obsessed over strategy, and soon he was beating everyone around him. It escalated quickly. He began organizing tournaments at school, drawing top players from across Denmark. And even then, the gap was obvious. Gus was dominating, playing at a level that looked far beyond his age. Still, backgammon wasn't exactly a long-term career plan. Gus had inherited a strong work ethic from his mother and paired it with a natural talent for mathematics. That combination earned him an academic scholarship, and he decided accounting would be a sensible path forward. But Gus had already proven one thing about himself. When he mastered something, he needed a bigger challenge. That hunger carried him across the Atlantic to the University of California, Santa Cruz. California brought sunshine, freedom, and a turning point that would change everything. One casual invitation to a weekly poker night introduced Gus to Texas Hold'em. He had never played before, which made him seem like an easy win. That assumption didn't last long. Gus absorbed the rules quickly, experimented with strategy, and by the end of the night, he was the last one standing. More importantly, he was hooked. He began playing constantly, spending time at the Ocean View card room, learning the rhythm of the game. Even with his natural ability, Gus saw how much there was still to learn. Instead of backing off, that realization pulled him in deeper. Poker had the same strategic depth as backgammon, the same psychological warfare, but with much higher stakes. 2 years into college, Gus had to return to Denmark for mandatory military service. Most people might see that as an interruption. Gus saw opportunity. During downtime, he played poker with fellow recruits, testing ideas, refining instincts, and exploring different formats like Omaha, Raz, and 7-card stud. When his service ended, he didn't hesitate. He boarded a plane and went straight back to the United States. This time, his destination was New York City. New York was where the dream met reality. Gus chased the life of a professional gambler, grinding through cash games and learning hard lessons. In 1996, he made his first appearance at the World Series of Poker and exited early. It was far from glamorous. These years were difficult, often forgotten later when people called him an overnight success. He wasn't winning big yet, but he was learning, adapting, and refusing to quit. Then came the breakthrough idea that changed everything. Gus decided to become unreadable. He threw away convention and began playing a wildly unpredictable style, entering pots with unusual hands and applying relentless pressure after the flop. He bluffed aggressively, embraced chaos, and forced opponents into constant discomfort. Losses still happened, but when he won huge. This was the birth of the Gus Hansen persona the poker world would soon fear. By the early 2000s, the results started to speak loudly. In 2002, Gus entered the World Poker Tour's 5-Diamond World Poker Classic and tore through the field, defeating 146 opponents to claim $550,000. The win wasn't just about the money, it was proof that his style worked on the biggest stage. He followed it up in 2003 with another major victory at the WPTLA Poker Classic, earning $500,000 and cementing his reputation. That same year, he launched an online poker site, PokerChamps.com. While the platform gained traction, balancing business with non-stop travel proved difficult. Gus eventually sold the site to Betfair for $15 million, a massive win off the table. And he still wasn't done. Late in 2003, Gus finished third at the 5-Diamond World Poker Classic, then captured his third WPT title at the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure. His forceful playstyle, growing list of trophies, and undeniable charisma turned him into a global poker icon. In 2004, his popularity even spilled outside the poker world, when he was named one of People magazine's sexiest men alive. In 2005, Gus received an invitation to the Poker Superstars Invitational Tournament, featuring a massive $400,000 buy-in and legends like Doyle Brunson and Phil Ivey. Gus didn't flinch. He attacked the field with confidence and walked away with first place and a $1 million prize. By 2007, his journey took him to Australia for the Aussie Millions. After strong performances across events, Gus claimed the main event title and a $1.5 million payday. He later documented the experience in his book, Every Hand Revealed, which became a bestseller in both Denmark and the United States. Now, for a stretch of time, it truly felt like Gus Hansen could do no wrong. Everything he touched seemed to turn into a win. And by the late 2000s, he was riding the absolute peak of his powers. In April 2008, that momentum carried him into the $25,000 WPT Championship event. Even though he finished second, the result was anything but disappointing. Gus walked away with an enormous $1.7 million payday, the biggest single cash of his career at that point. It was yet another reminder that he belonged among the elite. By then, Gus had already earned more than $7 million in live tournaments, but in his own mind, tournaments were only part of the story. Cash games were where he believed his true edge lived. Fans still talk about his legendary showdown with Daniel Negreanu on high-stakes poker, where Gus somehow turned quad fives against Negreanu's full house. The pot exploded to a then record-breaking $575,000, and the hand became one of the most replayed moments in televised poker history. It perfectly captured who Gus was: fearless, unpredictable, and always willing to push things to the edge. That same larger-than-life image helped him land a major sponsorship deal with Full Tilt Poker. Gus became one of the faces of the brand, appearing in promotional videos and wearing their logo every time he sat down at a table. Full Tilt also backed him financially, allowing him to play exclusively on their site. At the time, it looked like a perfect partnership, one that would keep him at the top for years. Then came 2010, a year that felt like the ultimate validation of his career. Gus finally won his first World Series of Poker bracelet, taking down the No Limit Hold'em High Roller Heads Up event. Along with the bracelet came a payout of over $450,000, a milestone that had somehow eluded him until then. As if that wasn't enough, he closed out the year by winning the Poker Million 9 tournament and adding another $1 million to his name. Gus Hansen wasn't just relevant, he was still governing. The last truly massive splash of that era came in 2012 at the Aussie Millions $250,000 No Limit Hold'em Challenge. Gus battled his way to the final table, standing toe-to-toe with legends like Phil Ivey and Patrick Antonius. He finished third, a result that still paid him $820,000. While it wasn't a win, it marked the end of a chapter. After that moment, the cracks began to show. Following the Aussie Millions, Gus started to struggle. The big tournament scores slowed down, and smaller cashes were no longer enough to sustain his high-stakes lifestyle. For the first time, he began openly questioning himself, wondering if the game had passed him by or if he had simply lost his edge. Those doubts weighed heavily, especially for someone who had built his entire identity around competing at the highest level. At the same time, things were going very wrong online. Without the same financial safety net he once had, Gus continued to battle the toughest opponents on the internet. The results were brutal. Over time, his losses reportedly climbed past $21 million, the largest known online poker loss ever recorded. The game felt different. Through a screen, without physical reads, body language, or face-to-face pressure, the instincts that once made him special didn't translate the same way. Gus eventually admitted that online poker simply wasn't where he thrived. After a long internal struggle, he made a decision that couldn't have been easy. Gus stepped away. He focused on rebuilding his finances, taking on a normal accounting job, and returning to backgammon as a way to earn money. After years of private jets, luxury hotels, and million-dollar pots, the quiet routine of everyday life must have felt strange. Still, it was a smart and necessary reset. Then, slowly, he returned. Around 2017, Gus resurfaced and announced he was ready to grind again. In 2018, he briefly dipped his toes back into online poker, though he wisely didn't stay long. After nearly 3 years of inactivity, he reappeared on social media, announcing a return to Las Vegas and hinting that it would be a good summer. The Great Dane was back. This time, however, he wasn't chasing tournament glory right away. Instead, he jumped straight into high-stakes cash games in the legendary Bobby's Room, returning to the format he always loved most. In 2024, Gus officially confirmed a full comeback. He announced plans to play at the EPT Monte Carlo Grand Final and signed a major partnership with Winamax, joining a powerhouse team alongside some of the best players in the world. In 2025, he made a deep run at the Winamax Poker Open in Aix-les-Bains, reaching the final day and coming painfully close to ending a 12-year trophy drought. He finished 7th after a brutal cooler, but the result sent a clear message. Gus Hansen is back, energized, competitive, and once again, enjoying the game. His recent deep runs and renewed love for tournaments show a player who has evolved, learned, and survived the highest highs and lowest lows. The legend of the Great Dane has never been just about winning. It's about resilience, reinvention, and an unbreakable hunger for the fight. And if history tells us anything, his story is far from finished. If you enjoyed this story, don't stop here. Click the next video to dive into another unbelievable poker career.